Eli Carver was driving his water wagon across the dead lands. Amid the crunching sound of wheels grinding over sand, he suddenly caught a different noise, faint, like the breath of someone on the edge of death. He pulled the reins, stepped down, and listened. The sound came again. "Help me." Eli turned, scanning the area. At the edge of a ravine, beneath a mound of sand, something flickered, a strand of black hair, and then a pair of eyes. He dropped to his knees and started digging. Each handful of sand burned his hands, but he kept going, until he pulled free a battered body. She was an Apache woman, thin to the bone, her skin scorched by the sun, blood seeping from her wrists where ropes had cut deep. Her breath was weak, her lips cracked and dry. Eli grabbed his canteen and let a few drops trickle onto her lips. Her eyes fluttered open, dazed, and her voice came out rough like a wind through sand. "You saved my life. By tribal law, I owe you my body." Eli stood still, sunlight casting sharp shadows across his sun-bronzed face and steely gray eyes. He reached into the wagon and pulled out a blanket, gently laying it over her body. Then he said softly, "You being alive is enough. I do not need your body." He lifted her into the wagon and snapped the reins. The wheels rolled forward through the sand, leaving behind a deep hollow, the place that would have been her grave today. The wagon rolled across the rugged terrain, its wheels screeching like a cry of pain. The sky was overcast, and harsh sunlight poured through the mountain pass, casting light on the hunched figure of a man steering the wagon and the limp body of a woman, wrapped in a blanket, lying behind him. Eli Carver stopped in front of an old cabin, wooden walls cracked with age, a tin roof faded by time, a place so quiet that even the wind once had no reason to pass through. He carried her inside, laid her gently on a bed covered with a worn wool blanket, and then started a fire. Smoke rose into the air, mingled with the scent of sand and dried blood. He cleaned her wounds, wrapping the arm that still bled. His calloused hands, more used to saddles and guns, now moved clumsily, careful not to hurt her. When the water boiled, he made soup and cut dry bread into small pieces. She remained unconscious. Her black hair clung to her face, hiding pale skin beneath. He watched her for a long time, not with pity but with the quiet look of someone who had seen too much loss. Night fell. Wind howled through cracks in the walls. Eli sat near the door, hand resting on the grip of his revolver, as he always did. Inside the cabin, the fire flickered, casting shadows across his face, weathered, solitary, but steady like stone. Sometime past midnight, she woke. Her eyes snapped open in fear, and she tried to sit up. "Where am I?" "My cabin. Why did you save me?" Eli did not look at her. He only spoke quietly. "Because I heard you were still breathing." She glanced around, saw the bandage on her arm, the clean blanket, the bowl of soup waiting nearby. Her lips trembled. "I have nothing to give you, except my body." Eli stood, adding more wood to the fire. "You do not need to give anything. Just stay alive." Outside, the desert lay in darkness. Inside the cabin, the sound of wind blended with the breath of two people, one faint, the other steady, and somehow they fit together, like two heartbeats searching for a reason to keep going. The third night, desert wind howled through the cracks in the walls, slamming against the creaking wooden door. The fire in the stove flickered weakly, like it was gasping its last breath, casting the shadows of two lonely souls onto the cabin walls. Naya sat still, the blanket slipping from her shoulders, revealing bruises that stretched down her neck and back. Eli silently sharpened a small knife at the table, the sound of steel scraping stone harsh but steady. She looked at him, her voice hoarse, as if breaking loose from stone. "Do you want to know why I was buried?" Eli looked up and said, "Go on." She took a deep breath, her dark eyes catching the firelight. "He was my husband, Gareth." Naya paused, then continued, each word falling heavy like stones dropped into a well. "He married me because of a promise my mother made to the tribe. But to him, I was just a possession. Every time he got drunk, he beat me. Sometimes for no reason, just to remind me he had the right." The fire crackled, light dancing across her sun-kissed face. "That night, he was drunk. I refused to bow. He tied me up, dragged me outside, and said he would teach me a lesson. Then he buried me in the sand. I screamed. I begged. He just laughed. Said when I stopped breathing, The world would finally be quiet. She lowered her head. Tears fell and vanished instantly on her burning hands. If you had not come, I would have been vulture food by now. Eli set the knife down. No comfort, no pity. He poured her a shot of whiskey and slid the glass toward her. Drink. Naya looked up at him. You are not afraid of me? Someone who was buried alive? Someone left behind? Eli answered, voice gravelly but firm. What is there to fear? Out here, everyone has something that once buried them. The only difference is, some still choose to stand up. Silence. Outside, the dry wind carried grains of sand that scraped against the cabin, like words left unsaid. Inside, the fire pulsed gently, casting light over two faces, one washing away memory with tears, the other with the quiet strength of someone who knows how to listen. The sun rose late after several days of wind and sand. Warm golden light poured through the wooden window, landing gently on Naya's face as she opened her eyes. No more nightmares, no more screaming, just the smell of smoke from the stove and the soft clink of metal. Eli was out on the porch, reforging a blade. She tried to sit up. Every movement still stung, but it no longer burned. As her bare feet touched the cold wooden floor, her legs trembled, yet she walked. She opened the door and stepped outside. The dry field stretched endlessly, and the wind lifted the dust like morning mist. A strange feeling washed over her. Freedom. Eli looked up as he saw her. You should rest more. I have rested enough, she replied, her voice still hoarse but firm. He said nothing more, just handed her a dipper of water and returned to the harnesses. Naya watched him, her gaze gradually softening. This man asked no questions. He just worked, as if her presence here was the most natural thing in the world. By noon, she was sitting on the porch peeling potatoes, watching Eli tie down the horses, patch the fence, and fix the door. The sun darkened his skin, sweat traced his back, but his expression remained calm. There was something solid in him, like stone but not cold. Later in the afternoon, Eli brought out two guns, one smaller. Do you know how to shoot? Naya shook her head. Then learn. He placed the gun in her hands, stepped behind her, adjusted her stance shoulder to shoulder. Hold steady. Breathe deep. Do not think about him. Think about yourself. The gunshot cracked through the dry air. A tin can toppled. Naya smiled faintly, the first smile since he had met her. Eli looked at her, said nothing, and gave a small nod. In that brief moment, they both understood. What they were seeking was no longer just a debt repaid. It was a new way to live. That night, under the glow of the oil lamp, Naya sat mending his old shirt. She spoke softly. I used to think I was only alive to endure. Eli replied, eyes still on the fire. And now? Now. I want to live to remember what this feels like. Outside, the desert wind swept through, carrying red dust, the old witness of many who had once lost their way. But tonight, in the little cabin on Hell Creek Hill, there were two people, and two fires burning together. Thank you so much for being here. If this story reminded you of the old days, those dusty afternoons, the echo of hoofbeats deep in your heart, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. So each day, we can sit down again, and I will tell you another story from the West. The 10th morning since the day Eli dug Naya out of the sand. The air was strangely still. A light breeze, clear skies, and the steady sound of a saw echoed from the backyard. Naya was hanging blankets to dry, her black hair blowing messily across her forehead. Everything seemed peaceful, until the sound of hooves broke the silence. Eli looked up. The clinking of metal on saddles, gruff voices in an Eastern accent. He set the saw down, wiped his hands on his pants, and stepped out onto the porch. Down the dusty road, 3 men on horseback approached an officer and 2 frontier soldiers. The lead rider stopped and spoke, voice dry and clipped. Good day. We are looking for an Apache woman who fled her tribe. They say she was to be punished for breaking tribal law, but she has been missing for 3 weeks. Naya froze behind the door, clutching the edge of the blanket, heart pounding wildly. Eli did not turn around, only tilted his head slightly. Haven't seen anyone. Out here, it's just me and a few stubborn cattle. The officer glanced past him, eyes scanning the inside of the cabin. Naya crouched slightly, hiding behind the curtain. She could hear her own heartbeat, even the heavy breath of the horses. If you do see her, report it to the post. She could be dangerous. Eli replied curtly, Danger doesn't come from the one running. It comes from the ones chasing. The officer stared at him for a moment, then grunted, tugging on the reins. The three horses turned, riding off, a cloud of dust rising behind them and blotting out the Sunday. Eli stood there, watching until the sound of hooves faded into the wind. When he turned back, Naya was still in the same spot. Her face pale, eyes full of worry. They will come back. Maybe. Why did you help me? Eli looked at her for a long moment, his voice lowering. Because I once saw another woman beg the same way you did, and I did not get there in time. The words dropped like a knife into the silence. Naya asked nothing more. She stepped forward, her trembling hand resting gently on his. If they come again, I will not hide. Eli nodded. No one has to hide in this house. Outside, the season's first wind shifted. A dark cloud gathered in the west. In the sky above, vultures circled slowly. Neither of them spoke it aloud, but they both knew peace had only just arrived, and the storm was coming. That afternoon, the sky turned a dull gray. The air grew heavy, the scent of rain mixing with the dry earth. Eli stood on the porch, eyes fixed on the dark clouds rolling down from the western mountains. He knew the storm was coming. Naya gathered the laundry, shut the windows, her hands trembling in the rising wind. Strands of black hair blew wild, sticking to her sweat-dampened cheeks. As she latched the last window, thunder cracked, and a white bolt of lightning slashed across the sky like a knife. Then the storm hit. Winds howled. Rain pounded the tin roof. Sheets of water slammed against the wooden walls. The entire cabin shuddered under nature's fury. Eli braced the front door. Scanning the room, the fire in the stove had gone out. The only light was the flickering oil lamp on the table. Naya curled up in a chair, clutching a blanket. I hate thunder. Her voice was small, almost lost. Eli walked over and handed her his thick coat. It is just noise. She let out a faint laugh. In my tribe, they say thunder is the spirit's anger. Out here, he said, it is just the sky learning how to breathe. A flash of lightning lit up the window, casting their faces in sharp relief, one weary, the other afraid. Then the darkness swallowed them again. Eli sat across from her, placing his revolver on the table. His fingers turned the cylinder slowly, almost absently. What scares you more, the thunder, or him? Naya looked at him, eyes deep and glistening. He is still in my head. Whether he is dead or alive, I still hear his voice. They sat like that, saying nothing more, listening to the rain hammer the roof. Sometimes, peace does not come from silence, it comes from having someone who stays. When the storm began to calm, Naya rose and stepped toward the oil lamp. Its light caught her face half in shadow, half in flame. If you want, I will leave when the sun rises. Eli looked up, voice low and steady as the ground beneath them. If I wanted you gone, I would have let you die in the sand. Naya froze. She stared at him for a long time, then slowly walked to the table. The oil lamp between them kept burning, and for the first time, neither of them felt cold. Outside, the rain still fell, but now, it sounded like the earth breathing again after a long sleep. That morning at dawn, the sky was still veiled in mist, and the ground remained soaked from the storm the night before. When the sound of hooves echoed from afar, heavy, slow, and chillingly familiar. Eli was chopping wood when he froze, his eyes fixed on the trail that led up the hill. Through the fog, 3 riders emerged. In the center rode Gareth, a tall man with broad shoulders, a face worn by drink, and a jagged scar cutting across his chin. His stare was part sneer, part madness. Heard someone pulled you out of the desert, Naya, he shouted, his voice booming across the prairie. Well, come on out. Time to go home, wife. Naya stepped onto the porch, the scar on her shoulder still visible, her eyes wide but calm. Home, she said softly, her voice trembling but sharp. My home is under the sand, the very place you buried me. Gareth laughed and spat on the ground. I am gonna teach you how to talk proper again. He signaled to his 2 men. They dismounted, hands on their gun grips. Eli stepped out from the shadows of the barn. The early light hit his sun-darkened face, his gray eyes cold as steel. He said nothing, just loaded his revolver slow, steady, deliberate. Gareth scoffed. You think you can keep my wife from me, rancher? I am not keeping anyone, Eli replied, voice low and thunderous. But if you bring violence here, you will pay dearly for it. The moment the words left his lips, gunfire exploded. One of Gareth's men dropped instantly, sand flying in a cloud. The second fired back, a bullet tearing through the cabin window. Naya charged forward, gripping the small pistol Eli had once taught her to shoot, and pulled the trigger. Her shot struck the man in the shoulder. He collapsed. Gareth roared, drew his gun, but Eli had already stepped between him and Naya. Both fired nearly at the same time. The sound of bullets cracked across the plains. When the smoke cleared, Gareth lay face down, his weapon flung aside, blood soaking his shoulder. Eli walked over, his gun still aimed, but did not shoot again. He knelt down and said quietly, "A man like you deserves to die. But that is the difference between you and me." He pulled off Gareth's belt, tied his wrists tightly, and dragged him to the gate. Just then, the sound of more hooves approached. The border patrol was passing by. Eli pointed. "I got something you boys have been looking for." The officer surveyed the scene, nodded, and took Gareth and his men into custody before riding off. Naya stood at the porch, her eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from the weight lifting off her chest. Eli wiped his hands and turned to her. "It is over," she asked quietly. "Do you regret it?" "No, but I am tired." They looked at each other. No more sand, no more screaming, just breath, real, warm, and finally, theirs. Spring returned to Hell Creek as quietly as a promise. After months of scorching sun and sandstorms, fresh grass began sprouting along the broken fence line, and birds came back to the old cabin roof. The sky no longer burned like a furnace, but was clear like fresh rainwater, reflecting a land once forgotten. Eli Carver sat on the porch, driving the final wooden stake into place. Sweat rolled down his sun-worn cheek, but his eyes no longer carried the emptiness they once did. Inside, the scent of soup drifted through the cabin, along with soft footsteps. The door opened. Naya stepped out, her rough cotton dress tugged by the breeze, hands holding a warm cup. The spring wind caught her long black hair, brushing against the faint scar on her neck, a mark once close to death. But now, it was no longer shame. It was proof that she had survived. She handed him the cup. "It's warm again." Eli took a sip and smiled gently. "First time in years this season means something to me." Naya sat down beside him. "In my tribe, they say if someone pulls you from the sand, their soul becomes tied to yours forever." He looked at her, half smiling, half sighing. "I don't believe in souls." She looked up, her dark eyes catching the sunlight. "Neither did I, until I met you." Silence. Wind swept across the field, rippling the young grass like waves. Naya placed her hand on her belly so naturally that Eli froze. She spoke softly, her voice trembling but bright like morning light. "Maybe. Soon there will be someone else here to listen to this wind with us." Eli said nothing. He just looked at her, then out toward the open land where sunlight spread over the earth, and life was slowly returning after the storm. In his eyes, something shifted, something he thought had died with his wife and child, now beginning to stir again. He stood, walked to the fence, and touched the new wooden post. "This is for the future. So when someone grows up here, they'll know the line between fear and freedom." Naya stood behind him, wind lifting her hair, smiling. "This land once swallowed me. Now it's given me life again. Maybe it chose you to help me stay." The sun tilted westward. Golden light poured over the cabin, casting two long shadows side by side. In the distance, a horse neighed, the sound carried on the breeze. Everything felt still. No vows, no wedding. Just two souls once buried in the sand, now watching spring return together. The West promises nothing but wind, dust, and loneliness. But sometimes, in the middle of all that emptiness, two people find each other, not to forget the past, but to prove that even dead land can bloom again. It is a true honor to share this journey with you, our cherished listeners of Wild West storytelling. I sincerely hope your days are filled with peace and happiness. I love you all. Tell me what you felt about this story. Leave a comment below. Type the number 1 if this story touched your heart. And do not forget to subscribe, so you never miss another thrilling tale from the Wild West.